Welcome to this deep dive where we unpack complex topics using the sources you've brought us. Today, we're tackling a big one, the potential risks and dangers of artificial intelligence. You've shared a stack of fascinating material, everything from official reports to public discussions.
Yeah, and our goal here isn't just to, list concerns, but to really understand what the sources are saying about the specific downsides of AI and why those issues matter and how different perspectives, researchers, everyday people, how they see these potential threats playing out.
Absolutely. The sources are quite a mix, which is great. It gives us a really well-rounded view. We have that deep dive from the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, focusing specifically on algorithmic bias.
Which is crucial.
Some insights on general AI dangers from built-in, a rich collection of public perspectives from a Reddit discussion, and then research on existential risk and the AI arms race.
It gives us layers, doesn't it, from the sort of technical underpinnings of risk all the way up to potential global implications.
Okay, let's jump right in and unpack this material. What immediately stands out from sources like the built-in article is that many long-standing concerns about AI, things debated within the tech community and beyond for years, are still very much front and center.
Definitely. We're talking about things like the automation of jobs, the spread of fake news,
Right.
and the idea of an AI-powered arms race. Big topics.
And that anxiety about job automation, it's not just theoretical, is it? It's clearly a tangible fear reflected in that Reddit discussion you mentioned.
Oh, absolutely. People are seeing specific roles potentially being impacted right now or very soon.
Right. But underneath some of these concerns, like biased outcomes or even job displacement, a core technical issue emerges from that built-in source.
Yeah,
The lack of transparency, especially in some AI models, particularly deep learning.
that's key. Yeah. Deep learning models are incredibly powerful. They're essentially these complex layers of interconnected calculations.
Like a brain, almost.
Well, inspired by it, yeah. They can identify patterns in vast amounts of data, but the complexity means even the people who build and use them often struggle to understand exactly how and why the AI reaches a specific conclusion. Or, why it used certain data points. It can feel like looking into a black box.
And that opacity, that black box nature, that's a problem because it can lead to biased or unsafe decisions that are really hard to trace or fix.
Exactly. And it spurred interest in what's called explainable AI, or XAI. The goal is to shed light on those internal processes.
But is it actually working? Is it common?
Well, the built-in source points out that XAI is still very much a developing field. It's not common practice everywhere yet. Making a system with potentially millions, even billions of parameters transparent is it's a significant technical challenge.
Okay, so this difficulty in understanding how AI works, that lack of transparency we just talked about, that seems directly linked to why bias is such a significant threat. And this is highlighted so vividly in the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights report, the FRA report.
Yes, that report provides some really powerful, concrete examples of how AI algorithms operating without full transparency can lead to real-world discrimination. They emphasize that AI isn't just some future tech. It's already deeply integrated into systems affecting crucial aspects of life. Things like, what pops up in your social media feed,
Right.
all the way to deciding who receives social benefits. Really critical stuff.
And the case they cite from the Netherlands is, well, it's chilling, isn't it?
It really is. Hundreds of innocent families, many with immigration backgrounds, falsely accused of fraud by a biased algorithm, forced to repay social benefits.
That's devastating. It wasn't hypothetical. It caused immense harm and distress because a flawed system was making critical decisions about people's lives.
Exactly. That example really underscores why unpacking how bias gets into these systems is so vital. The report explains it's not just about poor data quality, although that's definitely a factor. Machine learning models inherently learn from their training data.
What they're fed, essentially.
Precisely. And sometimes they can place too much emphasis on small signals or patterns within that data, maybe correlations that aren't really causal.
Which can lead to something called overfitting, correct?
Yeah.
Where the model becomes too specialized to the specific data it trained on.
Exactly. It learns the training data too well, including its quirks and biases.
So performs poorly or unfairly when it encounters new, slightly different data in the real world.
That's the danger, and this overfitting can contribute to what the report calls a runaway feedback loop. The simulation results in the report show how quickly this can happen if models overreact to those small signals. It's a technical concept, but its outcome is very real.
Meaning the system just keeps reinforcing and maybe even amplifying existing patterns or biases found in the original data.
That's it. It perpetuates the problem.
Okay, let's see this feedback loop and bias in action. The EU report dives into two specific use cases: predictive policing and offensive speech detection. First, predictive policing. How does the report illustrate the risk here?
Well, law enforcement agencies, including some in the EU, are using or testing these systems to predict crime hotspots. They use statistical analysis of past crime data. Examples mentioned are systems like Precobs in Germany or CAS in the Netherlands, predicting burglary likelihood or mapping crime in small grid squares.
Okay, so the system predicts where crime might happen based on past data.
Right. And the simulation shows how if police are then allocated to patrol those predicted areas.
They'll naturally find more crime there, or at least record more incidents.
Exactly. And that new crime data then gets fed back into the algorithm.
Which strengthens its prediction for that area, creating a loop.
Precisely. And if the historical crime data the algorithm was initially trained on already reflects past policing practices, perhaps certain areas were already over-policed due to existing biases.
Then the algorithm just learns and reinforces those historical patterns.
Yes. Potentially leading to the continued over-policing of certain neighborhoods, often disadvantaged ones, and the under-policing of others.
And if those neighborhoods are segregated, that disproportionately affects people from specific groups.
Right. The report even connects this to potential differences in the quality of police encounters certain groups experience, citing studies on disrespectful treatment.
Wow. So it's a clear line from a technical mechanism, like a feedback loop, amplified by historical data, straight to a real-world outcome of potential discriminatory impact.
It demonstrates the tangible consequences very clearly.
Okay, the second use case, offensive speech detection. This involves algorithms using natural language processing, NLP.
Which is basically teaching computers to understand and process human language.
Right. Using NLP to flag potentially offensive online content.
This is obviously crucial for major platforms dealing with the sheer volume of online conversation. You can't have humans read everything. So the EU report team actually developed and tested several algorithms for bias in English, German, and Italian. And the results are, well, they're quite telling.
What did they find?
They found that certain terms significantly increase the chance of text being flagged as offensive, even when the text was demonstrably not offensive, according to the human researchers.
So, false positives triggered by specific words.
Exactly. In English, terms related to identity groups like Muslim, gay, or Jew often triggered these false offensive predictions. In German, it was similar: Muslim, foreigner, Roma. And strikingly, one model classified virtually all comments containing the term refugee as offensive, regardless of the actual sentiment or context.
Wow. Just the presence of the word was enough.
Apparently so for that model. And in Italian, terms like Muslims, Africans, Jews, foreigners, Roma, Nigerians, these led to incredibly high rates, between 66% and 85% of non-offensive comments being predicted as offensive.
That's a huge error rate.
It's massive. The report also highlighted gender bias, noting how grammatical gender in languages like German and Italian could add another layer to online hate, emphasizing the need to consider intersectional bias, how different biases overlap.
This really drives home how easily bias related to protected characteristics, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, gender, can get embedded in these language models.
And lead to real discrimination, like wrongly censoring someone's legitimate content or discussion.
So the report is saying these tools aren't ready for prime time, for automated moderation.
Pretty much. It makes it clear that current algorithms cannot reliably handle the nuance and context needed for automated hate speech moderation on their own. They might just flag words associated with protected groups in isolation and out of context, as the report puts it.
So while algorithms are useful for maybe a first pass for identifying potentially offensive content,
Yes, as a filtering tool.
the report states that the final decision on whether something is truly hateful should still be made by well-trained humans.
Which of course brings us back to the scale problem. It's incredibly challenging given the sheer volume of online content platforms face. The report also notes the significant technical hurdles in even assessing and mitigating bias in NLP. Things like lack of good data for languages other than English,
Right, the focus is often Anglo-centric.
poorly documented tools, difficulty reproducing results with complex models, and even uncertainty among researchers about data protection laws like GDPR when using public comments for research.
So a complex set of challenges there. Okay, we've seen how AI's lack of transparency can lead to bias affecting individuals and communities, social benefits, policing, content moderation. Let's swing back now to that anxiety around job displacement, which came up so strongly in the Reddit thread you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that discussion gives us a really interesting ground level view of how people are perceiving this threat in their own lives and industries. We saw examples like transcriptionists mentioned. Some people view that as a role AI could and perhaps even should automate, freeing up human effort for other things.
Using it as drudgery, maybe?
Potentially. But then professions like paralegals were mentioned with real concern, though, interestingly, one attorney in the thread pushed back hard,
What did they say?
arguing that a good paralegals value their critical thinking, human judgment, client interaction is irreplaceable by current AI. So it shows nuance and differing views even within a single field.
That makes sense. What other jobs came up?
The animation industry was discussed quite intensely. One commenter predicted massive global job cuts, even suggesting younger artists should demand buyouts now.
Wow, that's a strong prediction. Comparing it to manufacturing shifts.
Yeah, drawing a stark parallel to historical shifts like manufacturing jobs leaving America but potentially happening faster and on a global scale. Entry-level computer science roles were also flagged as potentially at risk.
But it wasn't all doom and gloom, right?
Yeah.
Some jobs were seen as more resistant.
Correct. The thread pointed to jobs like trades, plumbing, electrical work, things requiring physical dexterity and on-site problem solving. Also management, cybersecurity.
And mechanical engineers.
They seem to see AI more as a tool to enhance their work, like automating tedious tasks like dimensioning drawings rather than replacing their core engineering skills.
What about security guards?
They felt their roles' reliance on human presence, reliability, witness testimony, immediate judgment calls made it safer from AI replacement for the time being.
An interesting area that came up was therapy, relationship-based roles. How did that discussion go?
That was fascinating. Some suggested AI could potentially handle certain types of virtual therapy, maybe for individuals with more manageable sort of textbook-style mental health issues where it's largely one-sided talk.
I can see how someone might think that, but also the counter-arguments.
Exactly. Others strongly argued that the humanity is important, that the relational aspect, the empathy, the connection with a human therapist is core to the process and something AI can't replicate.
Did anyone talk about AI as a tool in therapy?
Yes, that came up too. The idea of using AI maybe to prepare for sessions with a human therapist, like journaling or tracking moods, which is a different kind of integration. And there was even a specific question posed about whether AI models could be designed to resist emotional attachment while still promoting self-care. Interesting ethical territory there.
So, taking that whole Reddit discussion together, the job concerns paint a picture of potential mass displacement, not just impacting individuals' careers.
But with potential cascading societal consequences, fears of unrest, financial strain for millions, reduced consumer spending impacting the economy, possibly increased crime.
A protectionist backlash, maybe? Widening inequality.
All mentioned that growing gap between the elite who own or control the AI and everyone else.
One commenter made a really powerful point, didn't they? Connecting this potential AI-driven future to a historical trend.
Yes, the trend observed since roughly the 1970s, where productivity has generally risen, but average wages have stagnated in many Western economies. The suggestion was that AI could amplify this problem on steroids.
So the sources show these fears ranging from biased algorithms affecting individuals right now, today, to potential widespread societal upheaval driven by job changes down the line.
It's a broad spectrum of concern.
Okay, beyond these, let's call them everyday and societal impacts, there's the more speculative but deeply serious concern about existential risks. The really big picture stuff.
Right. The Wikipedia source traces this idea way back. It's not entirely new. Authors like Samuel Butler in the 1800s and computing pioneers like Alan Turing in the 1950s, they pondered machines potentially taking control as they become smarter.
And I.J. Good coined the term intelligence explosion back in 1965.
Exactly. The idea that AI could rapidly self-improve beyond human control.
What are the modern existential concerns highlighted in the sources?
They include things like AI being used maliciously to generate enhanced pathogens or incredibly sophisticated cyber attacks that could cripple infrastructure. Or the risk could come from a misaligned AI itself, one that's incredibly competent, but whose goals aren't aligned with human values, acting in ways harmful to us, even if not intentionally evil.
Social manipulation also comes up as a key danger here.
Hugely. As AI gets better at generating realistic text, images, video deepfakes, and the like, it could become incredibly difficult to discern truth from falsehood online.
You can see how that could be exploited.
Absolutely. by authoritarian states to manipulate elections or control narratives, or by malicious actors simply wanting to fracture societies, sow chaos, maybe even enabling, as one source put it, an irreversible totalitarian regime.
And linked closely to this is the potential for an AI arms race. That sounds terrifying.
It does. The Kurdish Studies source identifies specific countries actively developing military AI. The UK, France, South Korea are mentioned. South Korea is singled out for its high robot concentration and its development of autonomous weapons, like the Samsung SGR-A1 gun turret. Autonomous weapons raise huge ethical flags.
Legally, too, presumably. How does this fit with laws of war?
That's a major challenge. Existing treaties, like the Geneva Conventions, regulate how wars are fought. Article 36 of Additional Protocol requires states to assess if new weapons comply with international law.
But AI weapons weren't really imagined back then.
Exactly. The source notes that when Article 36 was drafted, there was very limited debate on autonomy or even automation. Lawmakers didn't fully foresee modern AI's implications. There's also debate now whether a weapon violating Article 36 is automatically prohibited or if it would require a specific new treaty banning autonomous weapons.
And another source, IMDEA Networks, even brings up the challenge of controlling a superintelligent AI.
Right. Referencing the neo-fear of superintelligence and containment ideas, how do you control something potentially vastly smarter than you?
It's important to stress, though, that there are different views on how high the risk of these existential outcomes actually is, right?
Absolutely. The Wikipedia source mentions a survey where nearly half of leading AI researchers thought there was at least a 10% chance human-level AI could lead to an extremely negative outcome, which includes extinction, a non-trivial number.
But others are more optimistic.
Yes. Skeptics, like Mark Zuckerberg mentioned in the source, tend to emphasize the near-term benefit potential breakthroughs in curing disease, increasing safety through things like self-driving cars eventually. Though even groups like the Asilomar AI Principles acknowledge that advanced AI could represent a profound change needing commensurate care and resources. There's a general sense this needs careful handling.
So given this whole landscape of risks from immediate bias and job disruption all the way up to these existential possibilities, what are the sources saying about actually addressing these challenges? Regulation seems key.
Yes, regulation is definitely part of the picture. The EU is trying to be a global leader here with its proposed AI Act. The aim is to set a global gold standard, as they put it. The FRA report mentions this proposal includes provisions for fundamental rights, things like risk management systems and conformity assessments for AI systems deemed high risk.
And wasn't there something specific in there about bias, linking back to our earlier discussion?
Yes, very interesting. Article 10.5 of the proposal, as highlighted by the FRA report. It specifically provides a legal basis for processing sensitive data like ethnicity or religion.
Which normally you'd want to avoid using.
Right. But it allows processing, if it's necessary, to detect, monitor, and correct bias that could lead to discrimination.
Ah, so using the data to fix the bias, not create it.
Exactly. But crucially, the report stresses this absolutely requires strong safeguards like anonymization and strict necessity tests. And as noted, the law was still being negotiated when the report came out. Beyond the EU, there are other international efforts like globalpolicy.ai also underway.
Okay, so regulation is one piece. What about other approaches mentioned in the sources?
Well, the built-in source quotes Stanford AI researchers advocating for bringing in diverse perspectives. Not just tech people, but insights from the humanities, from various fields and backgrounds when creating AI.
So, addressing potential issues right from the design phase.
That's the idea. Build fairness and broader considerations in from the start. And the FRA report strongly emphasizes the need for more comprehensive and thorough assessments of algorithms in terms of bias before such algorithms are used for important decisions.
For they impact people's lives.
Exactly. For systems like predictive policing, they suggest case-specific investigations looking at the entire system lifecycle and context-relevant reviews, not just deploying off-the-shelf tech.
And for the content moderation algorithms we talked about.
The report strongly recommends human oversight remains central, and that mandatory bias assessments must be conducted when deploying these NLP systems. It acknowledges the challenges data availability, language diversity, but stresses these assessments are critical for responsible deployment.
So it really seems the sources consistently point towards needing better understanding, more rigorous assessment before deployment, keeping humans in the loop for critical decisions, and intentionally including diverse perspectives throughout the whole AI lifecycle. That seemed like essential steps.
Yeah, those themes come through quite clearly as necessary for mitigating the risks we've discussed.
So reflecting on all this material you've brought us, it paints a really detailed picture of AI's potential dangers. They range from immediate tangible impacts, like algorithmic bias causing real discrimination in things like benefit systems, or the job market shifts people are feeling right now.
All the way up to these profound, complex challenges like widespread societal manipulation enabled by AI, and even those potential existential threats related to superintelligence or AI arms races. It's a huge spectrum.
The sources really show that while AI is undoubtedly a powerful tool, offering significant potential benefits, its rapid development and integration into society come with these serious questions.
Questions about ensuring transparency, fairness, and ultimately human control and oversight. It's clear that efforts toward regulation and responsible development are underway, but the technical, social, and legal challenges are substantial. The tech is moving so fast.
And what really stands out is that AI's impact isn't just some abstract future possibility. It's here, it's shaping lives today. How we choose to understand, govern, and build these technologies now will really determine the scale of the risks and benefits we face down the line.
Absolutely. The decisions being made today are critical.
Perhaps a final thought from this deep dive for you, our listener, to consider is this. Given how easily bias can creep into AI trained on real-world data, and given the technical difficulty of fully understanding why complex AI makes the decisions it does, where should we draw the line?
Where should we draw the line on automating critical decisions that deeply impact individual lives or society as a whole? What level of human oversight, human judgment, should always be non-negotiable? Something to think about.